Hey everyone. So today we're going through 4 messed up 4chan posts, and a couple of these really got to me. Subscribe for more and let's get started. There is a second me on Facebook, and it invited my old principal to my engagement. In a town this small, everyone is already watching someone. I run the front desk at the only library in Ashwick, which is a small enough town that I know most of the people who come through it by their library card numbers. I share a 2-bedroom above the hardware store with my roommate Amber. I am 31, and until last week, I would have told you my life was quiet in the good way. Jessica proposed on Friday. She did it outside the library after closing, nothing fancy, and I said yes before she finished asking. When I looked up over her shoulder, Natalie was standing across the street. She was my middle school principal, retired a few years now, and she was just watching us with her hands in her coat pockets. I waved. She didn't wave back, and then a truck went past, and she was gone. At dinner, Jessica said the sweetest thing, that my Facebook had felt so warm lately, all those little posts about our life. I laughed and said she must be thinking of someone else. I haven't posted anything on Facebook in 2 years. She wasn't thinking of someone else. I would have let it go. Except the next morning, someone had tagged me in a photo from a bake sale I never went to, and on my break, I opened Facebook to untag myself. I typed my own name into the search bar to find the tag. There were 2 of me. The second account had my exact name, my town listed, 300 neighbors as friends, more than I have ever had. I scrolled, and there was a full year of posts written in my voice. Chatty little updates about books and the weather and Jessica, the kind of thing I would write if I wrote anything. People I recognized had commented on all of them. Warm, like they'd been talking to me for months. The profile picture stopped me. It was a photo of me asleep on our living room couch, a paperback face down on my chest, taken from across the room. For a second, I assumed I must have posted it myself once and forgotten. Then I remembered I have never owned that photo, and no one was ever standing where that camera was. She hadn't told a single person yet. By Sunday morning, the whole town knew I was engaged. And I know because I hadn't told anyone. Jessica and I agreed to sit on it a week, tell our families first. Then I walked to the corner shop, and the woman at the till congratulated me. A man shook my hand. Someone's mother said she'd liked the announcement. The other account had posted it the night before, a photo of my hand, my ring, with a caption in my voice about saying yes before Jessica finished asking, which I'd said out loud to no one but Jessica. 90-some warm comments from people who love me. I stood holding a carton of milk while the town I've lived in my whole life smiled at me for a life I never announced. I said thank you. What else do you say? I couldn't explain that the me they'd been talking to for a year isn't the one holding the milk. Then she went home and opened the account one more time. I sat on the couch and looked at that profile picture, the one of me asleep with the paperback face down on my chest. On Friday, I'd told myself I must have posted it once and forgotten. Sitting there, Sunday, I understood what I'd skipped over. Whoever took it was inside this room, not across the street, not through a window, close enough to stand over me while I slept and photograph my face. I don't leave the door unlocked. I thought about Natalie in her coat, hands in her pockets, across the street the night Jessica proposed, my principal who always did know things about us before we said them. I decided it was her. It steadied me, because the other option was someone who could already get in. I might be reaching. But she was there Friday, and there again Sunday evening, standing by the postbox, watching the flat. In the comments, someone wrote, I grew up 2 towns over from a place like this. Everybody knows everybody, which means one clever account is basically a skeleton key. Chilling. One commenter, Boiled Owl, said, the part that got me is the town loving you for a year for things you never said. You didn't get stalked. You got replaced in your own life and nobody noticed but you. A top comment reads, so someone photographed you asleep and used your unconscious face as the disguise. I would have to burn the couch and possibly the building. Every good thing reached the town before it reached her. After that, I started keeping a list, which sounds unhinged, and I know it. We picked a date for the wedding on a Tuesday night, just the 2 of us at the kitchen table, and the account posted the date Wednesday morning with a caption about how I'd cried a little, which I had at the table with nobody else there. Jessica told her mother we were looking at the old Chapel Road. The account had it up before Jessica hung up the phone. Each time, within a day, Natalie was somewhere on the street outside the hardware store, in that same coat, hands in her pockets, not doing anything a person can be reported for. Standing on a public sidewalk is not a crime. I looked it up twice, feeling stupid the whole time, and Jessica kept thanking me for things I never said. She'd bring up some long, warm conversation we supposedly had at 1 a.m, how honest I'd been, how she'd never felt closer to me, and I'd smile and agree, because the alternative was telling my fiancé I have no memory of the tenderest night of our engagement. So one ordinary evening, she tried to steady herself and reached back for something safe. I couldn't leave. I want to be honest about that part, because people always ask why I didn't just go. Amber and I co-signed a 2-year lease. We're barely 1 year into. The library is the only job in town and it's mine. And everything I'm building with Jessica is here, in this town, in this flat. Leaving wasn't a door that was open to me. So I sat on the couch that night and made myself think about calmer things. The roommate I've had for 2 years, the ordinary evenings. I remembered one from a few months back. I dozed off on this exact couch after a long shift. A paperback tipped face down on my chest, and Amber had come in and I'd half woken to her, laughing softly, phone up, saying it was one for the group chat. I remember mumbling at her to delete it. I thought about that and felt better. Then I sat very still, because I had never once let myself notice how much that little photo sounded like the one I'd been staring at for a week. She had checked twice. She reported it anyway. I finally did the thing the comments kept telling me to do. I reported the account to Facebook, and when a week of that went nowhere, I walked into the little station we share with the next town over and said out loud that someone had made a second me. I brought printouts. I brought the couch photo, and I told them, because I was certain, that it was Natalie, my old principal, the one who kept standing across the street every time my life leaked a day early. I said it the way you say a thing you have already decided is true. The officer was kind about it, which was somehow worse. He had me log into my real account there at the desk so they could set the two side by side, and he asked whether Natalie had ever once been inside my flat. I said no, never. He wrote that down. I walked home thinking they would knock on her door by evening, and I felt something close to relief that it was finally going to be someone else's problem to carry. 4 days later, the station called her back in. What the police found on Amber's second phone, they didn't need Facebook in the end. The posts, the nightly login at 1 a.m, the warm little messages, all of it traced back to one device. And the device was in my flat, not near it. In it, there is a phone I had never seen, an older one, that lived in the bottom of Amber's sewing basket in the room right next to mine. And it had been talking to 300 neighbors in my voice for more than a year. Natalie's name was on the list. It messaged, but not the way I'd built it in my head. She was never the one at the keyboard. The officer asked me, gently, how long I'd lived with Amber, and I heard myself say 2 years, and then I couldn't manage anything after that. I keep landing on the same fact. Every night I lay there wondering who was across the street. The second me was awake down the hall, on the other side of a wall I have leaned my whole tired life against. A top comment reads, "So Amber literally photographed you asleep and used your unconscious face as her disguise. I would have to burn the couch. And possibly the building." Vertigo commented, "People are dunking on Amber, but building an entire second you because your best friend got engaged and stopped needing you? That is bleak in a way I did not sign up for tonight." Natalie came in the week after and didn't say a word at first. She set her phone on the desk and pushed it across to me, the way you set down something heavy. Months of messages, all from the account wearing my name, inviting her to the engagement, thanking her for coming. She had loved that woman. That was why she kept turning up across the street, while the real me looked straight through her. She thought she was the one nobody wanted. And I understood the couch photo. Nobody had climbed in through a window. Amber took it one evening, me dozing off after a shift with the paperback on my chest, and months later she turned it into a face for the account. The watcher was never outside. She was down the hall the whole time, building a warmer me out of a night I slept through. When the police put it to Amber, She didn't argue. She told them she'd started it the winter Jessica came into the picture, when I stopped needing her, and that this was the only way left to stay inside my life. She's charged now, impersonation and harassment, and she's gone from the flat. The account went dark that afternoon. What I didn't expect was the part it left behind. The town spent a year loving someone warm who answered everybody, and that person was never me. So now they look at the quiet one at the desk and aren't sure which of us they'd been talking to. Natalie has never spoken to me again. Jessica stayed, which I thought was what I wanted, except half the tenderness she married into was typed by somebody else, and we both know it, and neither of us says it out loud. No thoughts, only dread, commented. Natalie, standing across the street this whole time, thinking she was the unwanted one. That's genuinely the saddest detail in here. In the comments, someone wrote, I can't stop thinking about Jessica having whole conversations with Hannah that Hannah was never part of. A top comment reads, right, that's the wound that never closes. Amber gets charged and leaves, but Jessica spends the rest of it wondering which of the two she was actually answering. Somewhere out there, someone else is typing their own name into a search bar tonight, and you're going to want to see what they found. My dead mother has me booked into a motel I've never been to, again tomorrow, prepaid. I am 36, a physical therapist at a small college, and I live in a staff dorm on the far edge of campus with my dog and nobody else. It is a quiet life, and I had made my peace with that. My mother died 3 months ago, and being her only child made me executor of a woman who owned almost nothing. There was no house, no savings to speak of, a car worth less than the tow off the lot. What she actually left me fit inside a jewelry box I had seen on her dresser my whole life. Costume rings, a watch that had stopped, and a key fob. A worn orange one, shaped like a diamond, stamped Rest a While Motel, Room 8, the numbers rubbed almost smooth from years in a pocket. I figured it was a leftover from some trip she took before I was born. The kind of thing you keep because throwing it out feels rude. I put it back in the box. What I could not put aside was one bank statement, because a single account had quietly paid that same roadside motel in cash drafts every month for 31 years. So she drove out to close it herself. The motel was 3 hours out, off an interstate exit with a gas station, and not much else around it. I went in person because the account needed a signature, and because I wanted to see the place that had taken her money for longer than I had been alive. The man at the desk was maybe 40, name tag Spencer, and he looked up and smiled like he already knew me. He said, "It was good to see me again." I started to explain that I was there about my mother's estate, that I needed to close the standing payment, and he just nodded along like we had done this a dozen times. Then he told me the room was prepaid straight through December, so there was nothing for me to close yet. He said I was down to check in again tomorrow, same as always, room 8. I have never once in my life booked a room in that place. I told him he had me confused with somebody else, and he laughed and said no, he never forgets a regular. I know how it sounds, but I did not let it go. I asked Spencer to check the name on the file, sure there was a mistake, and he turned the monitor and read it back. My name, my date of birth. My mother had put the whole thing under my name decades ago, before I could sign anything, and paid it in cash every month since. While I tried to make that land, he slid something across the desk. The orange fob, the same worn diamond shape, the numbers rubbed almost smooth as the one in her jewelry box 3 hours away. He handed it over without looking, the way you hand a regular their spare, like I had held it 100 times. That was the moment the keepsake stopped being a keepsake. My father never once knew where she went on her days out. 30 years of Tuesdays. I decided, right then, that my mother had kept a whole second life in this room and never told a soul. Somewhere in the back of her head, the arithmetic had already started. I was still turning the fob over when Spencer said the thing I have not been able to put down since. He thanked me for dropping off the week's groceries on Tuesday, easy and friendly, like someone he sees all the time. Then he asked whether the ramp was still holding up, or if he should get someone to look at it before the weather turned. I said it was fine. I do not know why. I have never brought groceries near that motel and had no idea what ramp he meant. But I was so deep in the affair in my head that I just wanted him to stop so I could keep building it. So I nodded, told him it was holding up fine, and let it go. I have gone back over those two sentences more times than I can count. At the time, they were nothing. Just a tired clerk mixing me up with somebody else, the way he had been mixing me up with my mother since I walked in. A top comment reads, "The clerk asked if the ramp was holding up, and you just nodded. I would have been on the interstate before he finished the sentence." One commenter, Blunt Hedgehog, said, "The room is in your name. That is not an accident. Your mother set that up decades ago so it would survive her, and it did. Right on to you." In the comments, someone wrote, "Do not let that renewal lapse before you know who is living there and who has been paying. The prepayment is your only leverage, and it dies tomorrow." I drove the 3 hours home that night and did not sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with the bank statements spread out, the ones I had first read as a chore, and this time they read like a confession. 31 years of cash drafts, the same amount, the same week of the month, never traced to a card or a check with a name on it. I used to think my mother was just bad with money, a woman who kept things in envelopes. Now I saw someone who knew exactly how to move money, so nothing pointed anywhere. You do not hide a hospice donation, you hide a room. She had hidden this one so well that the only proof had sat in a jewelry box on her dresser my whole life, an orange fob I dusted around without picking up. By the time the sun came up, she had rebuilt her whole childhood around a room she had never seen. Every Tuesday of my life, my mother volunteered at a hospice 2 towns over, or so she said. She left after breakfast, came home after dark, tired in a way I never questioned, and I built my week around her absence. The perfume she wore only on Tuesdays. The good coat. She checked her face in the mirror before a day of, supposedly, sitting with the dying. My father never asked, and I never wondered. Why would a child? I am 36, doing the math on a woman I thought I had finished grieving, and every memory had a locked room I never tried the handle on. So, I made a decision that felt brave. Spencer said I was down to check in tomorrow, and I would. I would drive back out, take the spare fob, let myself into room 8, and see the place she chose over us. One commenter, Corvid lately, said, "Whatever you find in there, do not let that renewal lapse before you understand who has been paying. The prepayment is the only leverage you have, and it dies tomorrow." In the comments, someone wrote, "Did your mother ever actually tell you where she went every week? 30 years is a long time to hide a whole day out of your life." And the original poster replied, "Every Tuesday, she said she volunteered at a hospice 2 towns over. She always came home with the same casserole dish, washed and empty, and I set the table around that dish my entire childhood." I have not told my father any of this yet. I do not know what I would even say. Maybe. Denver commented, "The clerk asked if the ramp was holding up, and you just nodded and kept walking. I would have been on the interstate before he finished the sentence." I want to be honest about what I expected, because it makes what I found worse. I expected a hideaway, wine glasses, maybe a second toothbrush, some trace of the man I had built in my head over one sleepless night. I let myself in with the spare fob, and for a second the room was just a room. Then I saw the ramp. A plywood wheelchair ramp ran from the door over the threshold, worn pale down the middle from years of the same path. There were grab bars bolted into the tile around the toilet and the tub, the good kind, the kind I fit for patients for a living. Along the bathroom doorframe, someone had penciled a growth chart. A ladder of little dates climbing the wood, the earliest of them from before I started school. Nobody measures a lover against a doorframe for 30 years. I stood in the middle of that room with the fob still in my hand, and I could not make the affair fit a single thing in front of me. She wrote the rest from inside the room while it was still going on. Locked inside room 8, phone dying, a car just pulled in. I am typing this sitting on the edge of the bed because I do not know who else to tell and my hands need something to do. After the ramp and the bars, I opened the closet, half expecting clothes that were not my mother's. Instead, there was a laminated card taped to the inside of the door, curled at the corners, in her handwriting. I would know it anywhere. It is a care schedule. Morning bath, medications with breakfast, and again at night, the Tuesday shop underlined twice. Someone lived in here. Someone who could not manage those things alone for a very long time. and my mother wrote the routine out by hand and had it laminated so it would not wear away. The name at the top is not mine and it is not hers. I have read it 4 times and I am not ready to type it here yet. The pull cord over the bed is knotted low so a hand can reach it from the floor. My phone is at 9% and the outlet by the bed is dead. I just heard tires on the gravel and a car door. I am going to stop typing now. The name at the top of the card was Chloe. I read it out loud without meaning to. Bath in the morning. Medications with breakfast. Medications again at night. Tuesday, shop. Underlined twice. I was still crouched at the closet when the door opened behind me, and I had not heard a key. A woman in her 60s stood there with a laundry bag on her hip and said my mother's name, Glad, like she had said it 1,000 times. I told her that was my mother, and that my mother had passed 3 months ago. She went quiet. Then she said I was the image of her, the woman who came every Tuesday for her sister. Her name was Sophie. She had cleaned this room the whole time, and she asked me, careful now, if I was Chloe's family. Because Chloe was going to need someone. The fob in her hand stopped, meaning what she had decided it meant. Sophie showed me the door before she left. Room 8 does not lock from the inside. It bolts from the outside. And there was only ever the one key, the worn orange one my mother carried for 31 years. It was never a room she drove to. It was a room where she kept someone. My sister. A person I did not know I had until tonight. Disabled, on no record, no benefits, no paperwork, 31 years inside a door that only opens from the hall. The mother I had been grieving is gone now, and every good memory I have has this room folded inside it. Chloe is mine. No one else knows she is alive. Sophie said sorry and stepped out, and I heard the bolt slide from the far side. Her car pulled away. The renewal is at 10. My phone is at 3%. My dog is in the car in the lot, and a set of headlights just stopped next to it. Sarah not really commented. A ramp, grab bars, and a growth chart in one motel room for 30 years. I feel sick. Someone spent a whole life in there and nobody came looking. A top comment reads, Sophie did not bolt that door to protect a secret. She bolted it because she has no idea if the money keeps coming now, the woman who paid is dead. You are the payslip, not the threat. A user named Grimjaw wrote, Op is locked inside the room they kept her sister in and still worrying about a laminated schedule. The window. Use the window. Leave a light on for her and come sit with me for the next one. I cleaned out my grandpa's house and found a bracelet with my name and a number on it. There's a second name underneath mine. She was the one who lived close enough, so she was the one who found it. I am a pharmacist, 29, and I spent last week alone in my grandfather Aaron's house in the suburbs, boxing up a whole life. He died a few weeks ago. My sister Claire is 3 states away and my cousin Tyler had work, so I was the only grandchild close enough to do it, which is how these things usually go. It was ordinary and it was sad. Cardigans that still smelt like him. A freezer full of the same soup, 40 years of tax returns in a cabinet nobody will ever open again. His Bible was on the nightstand, the soft black kind with his initials worn off the corner, and when I picked it up, it fell open in my hands and something dropped onto the carpet. It was a small silver bracelet, the engraved kind they clip on a baby in the hospital. It said Olivia, which is my name, and next to my name, it said the number 7 in Roman numerals. I sat on his bed and held it, and honestly, I cried a little, because it was such a him thing to do, to have a keepsake made for me, and tuck it into the one book he read every single night. The bracelet was not the only thing he had folded into that book. Here is the part I keep turning over. Behind where the bracelet had been sitting, pressed flat against the back cover, there was a sheet of ledger paper in Grandpa's handwriting. Narrow columns, names down the left side, the careful block letters he used for anything that mattered to him. I found my name about halfway down, Olivia, and it was written in the same row as another name, a cousin I have never met and never once heard anyone in the family mention, someone who died, going by the dates, 3 years before I was born. I read the line 4 or 5 times, thinking I had it wrong. Same row, my name and hers, set down like a pair. Then I looked at the far right column. Everyone else on the page had a date there sitting in the past. Beside my name, the date is next spring. It has not happened yet. I checked it against the calendar on my phone twice, maybe 3 times. It is a Thursday, about 9 months from now, and I have no idea what it is supposed to be the date of. She had a whole night to think about it, and by morning she had talked herself most of the way back down. I slept on it, and I feel embarrassed about the last post. In daylight, it is a much smaller thing. My grandfather Aaron was the most sentimental man I knew, the kind who kept every school photo and penciled the date on the back. So the more I sorted his rooms, the more that ledger looked like something he would keep. A private book of who got what. There were envelopes in his desk, cash in each, and a name in the corner, one of them mine, and a shoebox of notes he never mailed. I was the only grandchild close enough to come, and I admit the ugly thought crossed my mind that whoever shows up gets remembered. I let myself believe the week would end with him quietly leaving me something. A thank you for answering the phone. It was a warm story, and she wanted to keep it. Last night, I couldn't sleep, so I picked it up and turned it over and over. I sat under the reading lamp on his nightstand, the bright one for small print, and tilted the bracelet so the light ran flat across the engraving. My name is stamped deep and clean. But underneath, when the light catches sideways, there is another name. An older one, sanded almost to nothing, and struck over with mine. I could only read that it was longer than mine and started the same way. I felt stupid for crying over it yesterday. Of course he reused it. He grew up with nothing and never threw anything away, and having an old bracelet re-stamped instead of buying new is the most him thing on the planet. That is all it is. Somebody had this before me, and he passed it down. I keep telling myself that is all it is. A top comment reads, OP, a pharmacist finding a family ledger is peak wrong protagonist buddy. You count pills for a living. Of course you noticed the numbers didn't add up. Hedgewitch Stacy commented, every family has a story about a baby who came back. Most families don't keep a spreadsheet with a due date column. In the comments, someone wrote, old whole life policies getting reassigned inside a family is real and legal and boring. A death certificate 3 years before your birth in your name is not. Pull the county copy yourself. Don't trust their folder. She wanted them to argue with her. What she got was worse. I called Claire first because she is my older sister and she has always been the calm one. I told her about the ledger and the row with the cousin who died before I was born, and I read her the date beside my name. She did not laugh, and she did not sound surprised. She went quiet for a second and then said, in the softest voice, that Grandpa Aaron kept all sorts of odd papers and that I should just finish the house and let it go. I called Tyler after. He is our cousin and he does estate work, so I figured he would explain it as some boring legal thing. He was the same, calm, gentle, a little tired, telling me to close up the house and come home. Neither of them asked to see the ledger. Neither of them asked which cousin. That is the part I keep chewing on. I told 2 people there is a dead child sharing a line with me in Grandpa's handwriting, and the only thing either of them wanted was for me to stop looking. She sat with the ledger a long time after they hung up. I want to write this down plainly before I talk myself out of it, because it sounds like nothing until you say it all at once. At every birthday I can remember, Grandpa Aaron would take my hand, press that little bracelet into my palm, close my fingers over it, and whisper, welcome back, 7, every year. We laughed about it. All of us. It was Grandpa's memory going, we said, the same way he kept calling the dog by the old dog's name. I never once thought about it. Last night, I spread the ledger out under the lamp and read it like a shift log, name by name. Every grandchild who is alive has a row, and in that same row, in the left column, there is a second name I do not recognize. And beside that name, a date that already happened. Tyler has one. Claire has one. I have mine. Living child, dead child, paired off down the page in his careful block letters, I am on the 7th line. By the 3rd night in that house, she stopped pretending she was only sorting cardigans. I did the thing you are not supposed to do when something scares you. I went straight at it. Tyler does estate work, and he is the one who administers Grandpa Aaron's trust. So I called him and told him I wanted to read the whole file, every page, the way I read a chart before I hand someone their medication. He did not fight me on it. That was almost the worst part. He said, of course, that it was mine to see, and he had it emailed over inside the hour like it had been sitting ready. I want to be honest about why I could not just pack the car and drive home and forget the ledger. When I was 22 and drowning in pharmacy school loans, the family trust started quietly paying them down for me, a little every month, and I signed the paperwork the way you sign anything when someone is handing you air to breathe. I always thought of it as a kindness. I never once did the math on what it would mean if it stopped. The file came back, and she read it the way she reads everything now, twice, looking for the one line that would let her breathe. I asked Tyler to see the trust file, and this is what came back. I have read it 4 times, and I keep hoping I am misreading the plain parts, the parts written in ordinary words. Over the last 7 years, the trust has paid down about $90,000 of my loans, and it is not a gift. It is structured as a monthly annuity, a loan against my standing. There is a clause, and it is not buried anywhere. The instant I leave the trust in bad standing, the whole balance is recalled and lands on me at once. $90,000 due the day I stop being agreeable about all of this. So that is the leash, and it has been on me since I was 22, and I never felt the weight of it. Then, I did the other thing I had been avoiding. I laid the ledger back out and checked the date beside my name against the date in Grandpa's row for the cousin who died before I was born. They are the same day. The one written next to my name is the exact anniversary of when the first one died, 9 months from now. Claire is due in 9 months. She told me at the funeral, before any of this, it is a girl, and she already has the name picked, and I did not ask what it is. She thought the 6th day was the last of the boxes. It was the last of something else. I found the last thing on the 6th day, when I lifted the ledger and something slid from the back fold. A death certificate, the certified kind with the raised seal you feel under your thumb. The name on it is Olivia Clare, my first and middle name, and the date of death is 3 years before I was born. It sat under a column headed returned/due. I read it on his kitchen floor until the words stopped meaning anything. Then I held the bracelet under the lamp and saw the ghost name beneath mine, the longer one sanded down, the same as mine. It is her bracelet. He had my name struck over hers, and the metal beside the 7 is worn smooth, ready for the next, because it was never mine to keep. He had pressed the same 3 words into her hand every birthday of her life. Welcome back, 7. He was not confusing me. He meant it. Every year. I am not the 7th grandchild. I am the 7th time they wrote a living child into a dead one's row. The 7 is my slot, not my birthday. Claire knew. Tyler knew. The calm on the phone was not shielding me. It was them waiting for me to catch up. When Claire's girl arrives, the 7 moves to her, and I slide into another row. The man who made me feel most loved made me a placeholder. Nothing to report, a Bible, a bracelet, a life insurance transfer, and a handmade ledger, all legal. So I finished the house and drove home, then counted out other people's prescriptions with steady hands, in good standing, watching the date get closer. A user named Aaron's Not My Grandpa wrote, 9 months, a girl, same name. I don't believe any of this, but I wouldn't sit in that room. A top comment reads, does the ledger ever skip a number? Any slot with nobody in it right now? The poster responded with, slot 4, blank since 2002, a line through the row and no name. My aunt stopped bringing her son that year, and nobody says his name now. They don't skip, they wait for the next baby to fill it. One commenter, throwaway bleakly, said, they never threatened you. They just made leaving cost 90 grand. That's how they build a cage. Paperwork and a smile. Stay with me. Somewhere near you, a stranger is about to open a door they were told to leave shut. Things in my flat keep moving, and my family are the ones who think I'm losing it. She wrote one line on that board every morning and never once thought about it again. I'm 28, I shoot weddings and the odd magazine job, and I rent the top floor flat above a laundrette with my roommate Nolan. It's the kind of building where the machines downstairs hum up through the floorboards, and I stopped hearing it years ago. There's a dark room wedged into what used to be the airing cupboard, and that's where I spend most nights. I'm not out on a shoot. By the front door, in the kitchen, there's a little chalkboard. I write one reminder to myself on it every morning, exactly one, because I've always been scatty about errands, and a single line is the only system that has ever stuck. Pick up the prints, ring the venue back, that sort of thing. Nolan takes the mickey out of it, says it's the most organized thing about me, and he isn't wrong. It's been by that door since the day we moved in. I'm telling you all of this because it matters later, and because I need it written down somewhere that isn't my own head. She came home on the Monday tired the way weddings always made her. I had my arms full of kit, and the board was wiped clean. Not smudged, not half rubbed away, clean, like someone had wet a cloth and gone over it properly. I stood in the hallway with the bag still on my shoulders and felt the floor tilt because I was sure, properly sure, that I'd written pick up the dress alterations on it that morning. I checked twice, maybe 3 times, as if the words would come back if I looked hard enough. Then Rachel called out from the front room. Rachel is my oldest friend, and she was standing by the window with my watering can, giving the plants a drink like she lived there. I hadn't told her I'd be back. I hadn't told her anything at all. She smiled at me and said, "You gave me a key when you were in a bad way, remember, as though that were the comforting part." She had given that key away years ago and had not once thought about it since. I asked Rachel how she'd got in, and she said it like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. "You gave me a key when you were in a bad way, remember," she said. "The year you fell apart." She kept watering as she said it, moving from the fern to the spider plant, not even looking up. And she was right. That's the thing. There was a stretch in my early 20s where I wasn't well, where I lost a job and stopped answering my phone for weeks, and Rachel was the one who kept turning up at the door. I did give her a key back then. I'd forgotten she still had it. It sat wrong for about a second, and then it didn't, because it was only Rachel, and the plants did look better than I'd left them, so I made us tea. We talked about a wedding I had coming up that weekend. By the time she let herself out, I'd half convinced myself I was glad she'd come by. She made the tea before she let herself stand in front of that board again. I really had thought I'd written something on it that morning. Pick up the dress alterations. I was almost sure. But the harder I reached for it, the less certain I got. The way a word goes strange when you say it too many times. Nolan was away at his mum's, so there was no one to ask. And I'm scatty. Everyone knows I'm scatty. It's the whole reason the board is there in the first place. Maybe I'd wiped it out of habit and written nothing after. Maybe I'd only meant to write it and never did. I'd been up since 5 for the shoot, on my feet all day in the heat, and that does things to a person's head, so that's what I told myself. I picked up the chalk and wrote the reminder again, fresh, and I pressed a bit harder than I needed to, like that would make it hold this time. It's a bit pathetic, looking back, how quickly I handed the answer to myself. Of course it was me. Who else would it have been? For a fortnight, she let herself believe it had only ever been her. A fortnight went by and nothing happened, and I'd nearly let the whole thing go. Then I came home from a christening shoot on the Thursday, and the board wasn't blank. There was a line on it. Lunch with your brother, 1 o'clock, and I stood there reading it because I hadn't written it. I know my own hand on that board, the way I loop the letters when I'm rushing out in the morning, and this wasn't quite it. Close. But the L's stood too straight and the whole thing sat too neat. I took a photo before I could talk myself out of believing my own eyes. Then I rang Brandon, and he said, "Of course, we arranged it days ago. You texted me. I hadn't." Or, "I couldn't find where I had." That was when it stopped being about my memory and started being about someone else's hand. A tired person forgets to write things down. A tired person does not write things down in a hand that isn't hers. The question changed shape overnight. I decided someone had a copy of my key. There's a roof access door at the end of our landing that has never locked properly, and from the roof you can reach my kitchen window in about 4 steps. So that became the whole of my week. I had a locksmith change the front barrel, 40 pounds I didn't have. I bought latches for every window and fitted them myself at midnight, and I put a bolt on the roof door even though it wasn't mine to bolt. Nolan came back from his mum's, found me up a stepladder with a drill, and just said, "Right," and made toast. I didn't tell him the whole of it, I told myself that once the flat was shut properly, the board would stay the way I left it. It held for 4 days. A top comment reads, "Get the key back today, not tomorrow, today. And change the lock anyway, because a key you got back is a key that could have been copied twice." A user named Nolan who wrote, "Where was your roommate through all this?" Genuine question, someone else lives there and never noticed the board changing? In the comments, someone wrote, "You did nothing wrong and you're still going to pay for it forever." That's the part nobody warns you about with these people. The phone calls started coming in a voice she almost didn't recognize on him. Brandon started ringing more. "My younger brother has never once phoned just to chat in his life," he texts. And all at once, he was calling twice a week and talking slower than usual. "How are you sleeping, really? Are you eating properly?" He'd say my name a lot, the way you do with someone you think might bolt. At first, I thought it was sweet, and I let myself have that for about a week. Then he asked if I'd been forgetting things again, and he used the word again, and I hadn't told him about the board. I hadn't told anyone but Nolan and a load of strangers on here. He mentioned the lunch he said I forgot. He mentioned me being up a ladder at midnight fitting latches, which he could only have got from one person, because Nolan wouldn't have, and I certainly hadn't. Every single worried thing out of his mouth was something Rachel knew. I sat down on the kitchen floor after that call and didn't move for a while. She wrote the next bit down the same night, before she could talk herself into something smaller. I found out how long the group chat had been running. Brandon left his phone face up on my table when he popped round, and a message lit the screen. A group with my mum in it, and Rachel, and my own name, nowhere in the little list of people. I only caught the top of it, but I caught the line underneath the name, the bit that tells you the day a chat was started. Months. It had been running since the spring. All those careful phone calls, the slowed down voice, the "how are you really?" None of it had started with him. So that night, I put a small motion camera on the bookshelf, tucked behind the photo of my nan, where the lens just clears the frame, pointed at the front door and the board. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I'd finally gone the way they all so obviously thought I'd gone. I set it up anyway. If I really was doing this to myself, it would show me an empty room and a woman losing it, and some part of me wanted that. It would honestly have been the kinder answer. Part of her was still hoping it would show her nothing at all. I almost didn't check the camera. It sat there 3 days while I told myself I already knew what I'd find. Then on the Sunday, I scrolled the clips with a cold cup of tea. And there was one from 10:30 on the Friday, a morning I'd been out at a fitting. Rachel, at the board with the chalk in her hand, taking her time over it. The yellow tagged spare key, the one I gave her the year I fell apart, still hung in the lock behind her. When she finished, she photographed the board. Then she wiped part of it, wrote it again slower, and photographed that too. I watched it 4 times. The board was never my failing memory. It was her exhibit, a thing she rewrote and photographed so everyone I loved could see a woman who couldn't keep her own days straight. She had watered my plants that first day like she already belonged there. The group chat was underneath all of it. My mum, Brandon, Rachel, started 4 days after I rang round to say I'd landed a gallery job, the first steady thing in years. Months of them worrying over how I wasn't coping. So I took the key back at the door and haven't spoken to her since. But there's nothing here anyone will write down. I handed her that key myself, no lock was forced, nothing taken, and worrying out loud about a friend isn't a crime. I can't leave either. That flat is my darkroom and studio, and how I earn, I'm on a lease with Nolan I can't afford to break, and walking out now would look exactly like the coming apart she spent months describing. To them, I'm the fragile one, and the one who hit a camera and accused her oldest friend. Brandon still rings on Sundays, and I can hear he isn't sure which of us to believe. In the comments, someone wrote, "The scariest stalkers don't want in your house, they want in your family." She played the long game, and honestly, it nearly worked. One commenter, Half Stop Bath, said, "My aunt had a friend like this." By the end, the whole family thought my aunt was the difficult one. Took a decade to undo, and some of them never came back around. Thank you for sitting up with me through all of these tonight. If a voice in the dark has been decent company, leave a comment before you go, and I'll be here for the next one.